Being Seen is a weekly podcast hosted by me, Darnell Moore, with new episodes dropping every Tuesday. These are Black stories. These are queer stories. These are gay stories. These are American stories, focused on the power of storytelling and culture to transform how we are seen and how we see ourselves. Being Seen is produced by Harley & Company and Darnell Moore and created in partnership with ViiV Healthcare.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Home for the Holidays session for United We Rise. And we're centering this session around being seen, but I'm hoping everybody will have a glass, we'll have fun, myself included. And when I think about the culture work that we've been able to do at ViiV Healthcare over the last 5 years, I really think about the theme of United We Rise in every Black body, because this work that we have in Being Seen has its root and has a direct line to the gay and queer Black men we talked to in Jackson, Mississippi, and in Baltimore, Maryland, and their stories that we took and elevated into the play that some of you might have seen called As Much As I Can, which we played in Baltimore, we played in Jackson, and we took to New York. We came into 2020 looking to continue that work and needed to make a pivot, as we all did because of COVID, and then came up with the brilliant idea with the help of our creative partners at Harley and with our great host, Darnell Moore, to create this series around the representation and the way we're presented in media and in culture, and who decides that representation, who picks the images, and who gets to tell the stories. And the good news is that now more than ever, that is us who gets to tell our own stories. So with that, I'd like to cue up a clip from Darnell from Being Seen.
One example is that, when I spent a summer in Detroit at what was called the Detroit AIDS Project. And, and that's notable because it wasn't a department, it wasn't an office, it wasn't designed as if it was a commitment long term. Project sounds like something we're going to deal with and move on, right? Which was not atypical for the time. But I was doing work in the School of Public Health as well as medical school. And so I spent a month there trying to work on increasing the number of primary care providers who became educated in treating and diagnosing HIV. And so I was working on a project with that. And so there was one particular hospital where a lot of individuals who were living with HIV and who were sick enough and actually had AIDS and were hospitalized. And that hospital put people who were HIV infected behind a red door. And now that's where the tears come. I just found that so appalling that people were being sort of set apart and treated in a way that sort of labeled them.
And that was our very own Dr. Kimberly Smith, who heads up R&D at ViiV Healthcare. Darnell Moore, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. I wondered if you could comment on why now? Why is this work needed right now?
I mean, it's important for us in a moment where we are reflecting again on the mattering of Black lives, right? We have been with the pandemic, a storm within a storm where the refrain Black Lives Matter has once again been lifted up. But it's important to underscore that when we say that Black Lives Matter, we mean that all Black lives matter. And some of those Black lives are those of Black, queer, and trans and non-binary folk. And this was an opportunity for us to lift up those folk within the community, to celebrate, to center, to acknowledge the contributions that Black, queer, trans, masculine of center, masculine men identified folk have contributed to not only our communities, but to the world.
Can you talk a little bit about one of the things I love about this project is we call these projects immersive, and people are like, well, what does immersive mean? But can you talk a little bit about how this is Black all the way around, this project and this work?
It's Black on Black on Black on Black. But not only it's the content creators, the folk that we are interviewing and talking to are Black creatives, Black advocates, Black voices, Black cultural workers in the world. The photography that was curated by Giancarlo Valentin and Texas Isaiah, Black artists out in the world. The art that we have that serves as cover art for each episode comes from Black artists. The minds that were gathered to collectively think about how we can organize this. Emil Wilbekin, who we'll hear from tonight, Deshaun Usher, Kenyon Farrell, so many others have been part of this. And it's so important in a moment like this where we're not just talking about the mattering of Black lives, but we're actually ensuring that they're centered and in the position to tell our stories in our own terms.
What I'd be interested in your thoughts on how this translates and how the culture can move people to action. Because I think one of the things I've seen with public health campaigns and just with movements in general sometimes is there can be a lot of talk in the absence of action. And I think one of the things we've seen with the cultural work is that you get people to look at themselves differently. I know I listened to some of these episodes and saw bits of my psyche, reflected bits of my thought, and it moved something in me. So what are your thoughts about what this can do to decrease stigma for people in their lives?
So the reality is there is no movement, no type of transformation, no change that has ever happened without culture and art at its core. Instantly, the scholar Robin D.G. Kelley comes to mind, whose book Freedom Dream and the Black Radical Imagination is an argument all about how culture and art is the sort of fuel for change. Yes, we have policy work that needs to be done. Yes, we can take to the streets and disrupt. Yes, we can lift up our fist and we can do advocacy. But culture and art, it sort of invokes in us the energy, the compassion, the creativity necessary for us to actually go about and do the work of transformation. All good work, all good transformation that has occurred in the world has had at its center art and culture.
And I know that when I think about the reactions, do you want to comment on any of you get text and emails from all kinds of people talking about the impact this has had. Do you want to mention any of the people who talk to you about what this has meant to them?
Yeah, I mean, I get a lot of feedback from folk, and that is really what inspires me, whether that be from some of the folk we interviewed. Like I'm just thinking about a voice note that I got from Lena Waithe that was like 5 minutes long, and she called me from her trailer just talking about how moved she was by for once being able to be sort of affirmed in her fullness in a public way like that, and in a way in which that was connected to the celebration of our queer and trans and non-binary and femme ancestors. But then there are the everyday, like creative and beautiful people who exist in the world who are listeners. I got an email from somebody that worked in Oprah's camp for 20 years. I was like, first of all, this production is stellar. So like, y'all got the production down. And secondly, not only am I moved, but it made me also want to tell the story of a family member of mine. And then the young folk that are just listening and finding and hearing aspects of their own stories on it have been just amazing all around.
One of the things I was thinking about in the development of this and talking with people about the project is, I talked about the line and the origin of our culture work at ViiV and the project that preceded this and this one around, it started, like I said, in Jackson, Mississippi, this place called Cabot Lodge, Jackson, Mississippi, with everyday people. And I think that sometimes people forget, and I'm going to say it, I believe that sometimes people forget creatives are everyday people, and it's not this rarefied air. This is, you all are everyday people. When I read your biography, No Ashes in a Fire, I mean, that really came through to me. Do you have any comments on that?
I mean, I think the best of us, the best creative is a person who is attuned to what it means to just be a human person living. Look, I'm tell folk about it. I'm from Camden, New Jersey. You know, my people are in Camden and South Jersey. My roots are in my community. You know, like after I get off of a Zoom or an event like this, I'm probably going to go have a cocktail. You know what I'm saying? Like I hurt, I bleed, I am impacted by the world. I'm having this conversation in the midst of a pandemic that has made me feel as isolated as anybody else. And what I think the gift and creativity are that creatives have is the ability to harness that everyday experience, that common human experience, and funnel it in artistic expression, into cultural expression. Now, here's the thing: we all have that gift. We all have that gift. And I actually want to invite everybody to view this, that creative is not just a box that some people can find themselves in, but all of us can harness the best of our human experience and use it for our creative capacity.
Well, I know we've got some additional friends lined up to talk today. We have Emil Wilbekin joining us in a moment, and we have our Mistress of Ceremonies for United We Rise, Dominique Jackson. And so I think now I'm going to hand it over to you to do what you do, and we are going to have a mini being seen session right here between you and Dominique. So I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to actually be on this side of Dominique. We all know Dominique is iconic, um, advocate and voice, iconic in the ballroom scene, and now iconic in Hollywood. So, one, celebrating you, inviting you all to get a chance to sort of see what I do at home with that microphone behind me, interviewing Black creatives, Black voices, hearing all the amazing things they're doing. We're going to do a live version of that now. So, Dominique, welcome.
Oh, thank you, my love. And I must say, I commend you for your hard work, for your perseverance, for your resilience. And I also commend you for truth, because a lot of times people do not realize that we do hurt also. When you're out there giving of yourself, so much of you, creating space. I mean, and to sit and to do something that others are probably afraid to do, not because of anything of them being less than, but because for some of us, it's so different. We have been blessed with that ability to create, to make things happen. And so for you to make your studio and to interview Lena and to be such a voice for our community, I commend you. And it's an honor to be here.
See, y'all, look, y'all know we're about to do some bang now. We're about to have some conversation. Dominique, the title of the podcast is Being Seen. And, you know, that really speaks to the value in Black people, one, Black folk who are also queer and trans and non-binary, two, being visible, legible in whatever space we exist in. And both of us are in Hollywood, right? I'm working behind the scenes, you're working on a camera. Talk to me about the value of being seen and how you wish to be seen.
So that's going to be a little bit, because growing up in the West Indies, being a West Indian woman, being of West Indian descent, I was not supposed to be seen as a child. I'm hearing, is that me?
You sound real good. You sound good.
Wait. Oh, I think it's my hair. Okay, yeah.
See, that's what happens when you show a fly. This is what happens when you show a fly.
So being of West Indian culture, descent, birth, all of that, it has been, it has been, you've been told that you're not supposed to be seen. It's almost similar to what we as women are told many times subliminally. And even though subconsciously men don't even realize at times that they're telling us you should not be seen, be quiet. But by not being seen, how do you come to understand yourself? How do you understand that you are a part of society and community if you are not able to see yourself represented in this same said community and in society? You cannot say to me that, and for me, it was just a simple thing of transitioning and wanting to be the best woman possible. And when I looked on television, all I saw were straight haired white women. Then that was what I was told that was supposed to be beautiful. So what did I do? I relaxed my beautiful hair. I uh, uh, phobias developed. I developed phobias. Look, it's traumatizing me as we speak.
I hear you.
Phobias developed. I could not be seen with my edges not straight. I could not be seen with my hair in this kinky style. Why? Because I'm looking at television and I'm not seeing me. I'm understanding and cognitive that I am not those women, but there's a part of me that appeals to society's game that this is what I have to look like.
Mm.
From sex work to Hollywood, we always had to represent from the perspective of what men believed women were supposed to look like, and most of the time it was what white women were supposed to look like, and that was difficult.
You preaching? You better preach a word.
So now we have this dilemma of where I am refinding that ability to rock my natural hair because now I'm regrowing it and getting it back. Being seen helps us to develop culture. It helps us to develop as a people. It helps us to develop knowing that who we are is not bad. Knowing that who we are it's because let's no shade, and I'm gonna be real honest and keep it real, right? When we look at the way we dress, when we look at the way we think, when we look at the manifestation of what we believe love is supposed to look like, it's all from television. It's all taught to us. It's all told to us. So then, now that we can see queer people of LGBTQIA plus community can see themselves on television and not have to deal with, and still we deal with the stigma, but now we can deal with that stigma as we are in your face and we have more, but not all the protections that we need. Yes, we're still murdered, but being seen gives people the ability to know, listen, these people exist and they matter. So wherever we can be seen, we must show up. And a lot of times people confuse being seen with wanting attention. This is not about attention. This is about being a part of history. We look so many times backward and we look at the way history is told and we're like, no, that's impossible. He was in Africa.
But listen, there are some young person, a lot of young persons who just because they saw you and will see you on TV, right? Who will see possibility for themselves. Who will see possibility for themselves. And you made me think about a conversation. The last episode was a conversation with Lena, and she referenced how impactful it was for her to actually see her literal self on TV, playing the role, right? Like of this masculine performing lesbian on Masters of None, and how that would like changed her perspective and the perspective of so many others. So I want to ask you, what was it like when you first saw yourself on screen? Like, what were you thinking? What were you feeling? And then how did that impact your own perceptions of the way you see yourself?
Well, you might have to give me that again, because I will tell you this. It was the scariest thing to see myself on television because I did not think I was talented enough. And the only thing that came to mind, really, where everyone else was praising me and celebrating me, in my head, I thought, oh my gosh, you're seen. They're going to kill you as an example. These are the things that there were people that were in my camp that I thought that were supposed to be supportive were putting into my head. You know, you can't go here, to the point where for the past 2 years, I haven't lived my life out of the protection of someone. And that person actually became my fiance. So this whole, so it was scary at first to see myself. My world changed. I thought, and then I said, and I thought to myself, if I were a cis woman, would I have these feelings of fear? Would I fear being robbed and no one would show up for me? Would I fear that being shot, you know, after leaving an event one night and being made an example of to someone, right? Would that mean that would I matter? Is it all worth it? And then the comments started to come in about the bravery and the courage. And I shuddered on the inside as I thought to myself, they think I'm brave. I'm scared shitless. But I was walking up to my by my old apartment. I was walking up the street. I'm a New Yorker in the Bronx. And a woman came up to me and she looked at me and she said, "Because of you, I'm having dinner with my child after 20 years."
Mm.
And I said, "What?" She said, "I saw your show." And
Mm.
when she said, "I saw your show," she looked around to see if anyone was watching. And it was about, I saw your show and I realized that you're a human being too. I sat here in my religious beliefs. I sat here in my own tradition.
Mm.
And I left my child out there to suffer for 20 years. And she said, just like in your show, the moment that I contacted them, they didn't curse me out of anything. They said, "Mommy, I will be there on Sunday." She said, "Your show changed my life." So that aspect of it made me feel empowered. It made me feel like what I was doing was worth it. That whatever sacrifice, whatever would come my way, it would be worth it, just so that people can see us out there, so that we can have those moments.
I really appreciate you keeping it very real and reminding us, again, just to live in the world and be in the world as a Black woman, as a Black trans woman, there are stakes and costs and blessings, right, attached to that we often forget about. And I just thank you for acknowledging that. I also want to ask you about your freedom dream. Like, there are so many stories we have yet to see portrayed. And in your big, audacious freedom dream, like, what stories have yet to see? What do you want to see on screen? Like, what is that one or two stories that you like? I bet
Oh,
I got to see this representation
well,
on screen.
well, I don't want them to take my ideas, because we are working on certain things,
Listen,
and you know,
I get you. You can just give us the. I got.
you know.
I got.
But here's how I would respond to you. It is time for us to see reality on television, and when I say reality, I mean reality. We need to see those stories of survival, because people need them. We're seeing stories of success that tell us, okay, yeah, this person was successful because, well, they had an uncle or they had an aunt. We need those stories, especially those stories like the trans stories that we have today, where we had nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Those stories of survival, where you're talking about people who were marginalized not only because of color, but let's even deal with the intersectionality. Think about it. You're Black, you're queer, you're religious, you have your faith now questioned because you grew up in this religious with religious beliefs, with tradition being put onto you, and now because of your feelings, you're told you don't belong anymore. So now you have to find space. You have to actually find, again, try to find or question who you are, because the world is saying to you that you don't belong. We need to have these stories that really address the religious issues that we have, so that our Black community, especially, and Hispanic communities, Latinx communities can come together and realize that we are using this religion thing as a way for us not to face the reality of humanity.
Mm. I have one more question, and then I'm going to turn it over, move to the next part of the program. But I always like to ask people, who are the folk that you consider your sheroes and heroes, of people who made your walk possible, that you just often remember to thank?
So there's so many, because there's so many trans women out there, like Cecilia Gentile, um,
Mm.
like my little sister MJ Rodriguez, like Angelica Ross, like India Moore. And then there's stories like Sean Coleman of Destination Tomorrow, Jahira Gonzalez, my sister, stories of us coming from nothing. Let's talk about, sleeping in U-Hauls, Jack Mizrahi and myself. Let's talk about how we take it all the way back there,
Mm-hmm.
to those places where sometimes we don't think we can ever.
Let me tell
Yeah.
you something. You said U-Haul, and I instantly thought about driving up that I-95 from DC, from the club back to New York or Jersey, in the back of a U-Haul. Don't know nothing about
I was there. I was there in those moments. We were stopped outside the Holland Tunnel in the
that.
U-Haul. I mean,
Yeah.
like I left the question, so you gotta bring me back to it.
No, that was perfect. Actually, you answered it perfectly. I appreciate you so much. And I always say it's important to give people their flowers while you're right in front of them. I honor you. I have been so godly proud of you, watching you and cheering you on. You're amazing on screen. You're amazing off the screen.
Well,
Um,
thank you.
for sure. I'm really happy now to introduce someone else and bring someone else into the conversation. Emil Wilbekin, who's talked a little bit on the episode about stigma and HIV. But I want to cue up a clip of Emil before we bring Emil on.
When I think of stigma, I think about thoughts and ideas and judgments that other people place on you. And I think about false judgments, right? And kind of judging who you are based on anything, based on your race, based on your sexual identity, on your sexual presentation, on your health status, particularly as an HIV positive person. I think there's a lot of stigma that's placed on us. So when I think of stigma and kind of like my body and where I would feel it, I think about work that I do with my therapist, and it's like, where do you feel the stress? Where do you feel the tension? And sometimes I do it in meditation as well. I think for me, when I think of stigma and I feel it in my body, it depends. Sometimes I feel it. I experience a lot of things like in my gut and in my chest. But sometimes with stigma, it's a little more emotional. It's in my mind, and it takes you to different places, right? It triggers you to think negative thoughts about yourself. I think about it physically also as anxiety, right? Like being judged or thought about in a negative way, about things that I don't feel negative about, that I don't hold kind of shame around, but other people do. So that makes me anxious. And then I think sometimes that anxiety can reveal itself in kind of like rapid heartbeat and actually kind of take over and distress feeling of feeling very tired, right? And feeling very emotionally drained. And I think I grew up a lot experiencing stress, being bullied, being called faggot. I was overweight, so it was always a lot of fat jokes. I was effeminate, so it was always being, labeled as she, kind of misgendered and teased a lot. And I'm a sensitive person, so I kind of absorb all of that. And so it affects me in different ways. And it can also affect me as like wanting to stress eat or wanting to drink and numb myself, or just simply climb in the bed and hide under the covers. So I think it can affect my physical being in many, many different ways.
Emil, y'all, please welcome Emil, the
Thank
iconic and amazing Emil.
Oh, thank you, brother. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well, doing well. Happy to see you.
Always good to be in fellowship with you.
Y'all, Emil's going to be here talking to us about some affirmations and practices of care. If you don't know Emil, the history of his work is extensive, and he's done so much in the community, but so much in the media space. But more recently has been a curator of Native Son and a lover of people. So we welcome you, Emil, and turn it over to you.
Thank you, my brother Darnell. I'm very grateful to be here tonight to talk to you about affirmations. And in the clip that you just heard from Being Seen, I talked to Darnell about basically dealing with stigma and shame that I've felt in my life being a Black gay man who's living with HIV, and a lot of the hurtful things that I've heard about myself. Before I go into my talk about affirmations, I want to reference some things that Dominique said that I think help inform what I want to share with you. And she talked about how when you do this work, when you're an activist, when you're out there on the front lines and you're doing this work every single day, it is depleting and it is draining. And she also talked about how do we see ourselves. And so I think affirmations can be a powerful way to replenish ourselves and to actually armor up, right? To protect ourselves from the hate, the homophobia, the transphobia, the racism that we often feel as Black queer folks. Affirmations are defined as the act of affirming, the assertion that something is true, the confirmation or ratification that something is true. One of my favorite quotes from James Baldwin, who is the inspiration for the movement and community Native Son that Darnell referenced, that I founded 4 years ago. James Baldwin said, "I've always believed that you can think positive just as well as you can think negative." I am reminded of a friend who I met last year named Janelle. She's a trans activist from Atlanta. And she talked to me about how for a year, every morning, she would create 3 affirmations of herself. Those affirmations were reminders to build up her confidence, to protect her, and to remind her of who she was and how she saw herself. I really, really was inspired by that and started doing it myself about a year ago. And it's been very helpful. It reminds me of a quote from Marianne Williamson. "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us." As Black queer folk, especially living right now in COVID-19 and dealing with racial injustice and police brutality, especially folks like myself who are living with HIV or AIDS, and then people that are facing the insecurities of rent, insecurities of food, housing, and healthcare, and those who are working on the front lines who don't have the privilege to be at home and be isolated. Social distancing is not an option for many of us. I also think for our Black trans sisters who have been violently attacked and violently murdered and targeted and brutalized, we all need affirmations. We as Black folks face daily oppression, and we need to affirm ourselves to survive, to thrive, and to endure. So I just would like to share with you some of my, a few affirmations that inspire me. And these are from more famous Black queer folks. Audre Lorde said, "I am deliberate and afraid of nothing." DeRay McKesson often quotes on Twitter, "I love my Blackness and yours." And then Willie Green at We the Urban said, "Don't feel guilty for choosing yourself." You see, affirmations build ourselves up and remind us, as Dominique said, of how we see ourselves. And in doing that, it is a great protection as we move through the world so that other things don't hurt us, that words, which can be so harmful, actions that can be violent, that we are protected. I go to First Corinthian Baptist Church in Harlem, which is a wonderful church that is LGBTQI plus friendly, that is intergenerational, and that is inclusive. And one of the things that Pastor Mike Walren often says that I think are powerful affirmations that I want to share with you tonight: "I am powerful, unshakable, and adaptable. That for me has become a go-to. I am powerful, unshakable, and adaptable. That builds you up and reminds you of your resilience, of your power, and the fact that we can and have historically, as Black queer folks, been powerful, unshakable, and adaptable. Pastor Mike, who is a straight cisgender man, also often says, I am the embodiment of infinite possibilities. I love both of these because it makes you feel free. It makes you remember that you have the power inside of yourself to move through this world as a Black queer person, that you have the power to do anything. And as Dominique has demonstrated, and as Darnell has demonstrated, and Lena Waithe, and almost everyone, actually everyone who is featured on the Being Seen podcast, is that we can be free, we can be ourselves, we can be bold, we can be beautiful, and we can be audacious. There is an Instagram feed that I follow called Moon Omens, and today's affirmation is the good one. I am exceptionally thankful for the day I have been given. So I think the other thing about affirmations is it's not just about building yourself up, it's about giving gratitude to the universe and whoever you subscribe to and believe in, whatever higher power that you look to be grateful, right? I think grateful is also an important part of affirmations. Some of my own favorite affirmations that I just go to are I am powerful, peaceful, prosperous, and live in my purpose. That was one of mine that I used today. And then the other one is really simple, and I like alliterations if you can't tell. I am beautiful, I am brilliant, and I am blessed. You know, a lot of the creatives that have been interviewed for Being Seen are high profile. They are celebrities, they are artists, they are thought leaders, they are activists, they are people who are leading and serving in their community. And we just assume, right, that because they're public figures, that they are perfect, that they are solid, that they are whole. But many of us struggle, and many of us face the very same issues that you face. And so affirmations are, again, a way to build ourselves up. I would like to close with an affirmation that I read on Raquel Willis's Instagram, and I thought it was so great. And I believe that it is a perfect affirmation for the times that we are living in. Raquel is an amazing trans activist and writer and editor and leader, and she serves the trans community in beautiful ways. She wrote, "It's okay if I can't focus. It's okay if you can't be productive. It's okay if you feel overwhelmed. It's okay if you're exhausted. It's okay if you're confused. You're human, and these are unparalleled times. Take care of yourself. The world needs you for the fight ahead." So in closing, I would just like to say to remember to affirm yourself every day. It is so important that you support yourself as we are living in this global pandemic, as we are living through unparalleled, unconscionable times of racism, of insecurities, of transition and transformation in this world. Remember, you are worthy and you are enough. Thank you so much.
No, that was so beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Welcome back. I was supposed to welcome y'all back. I was so caught up in my affirmation.
Emil, that was everything. Thank you. Like thank you. Like you thank you.
Thank you, Dominique.
That was so beautiful. I'm also really reflecting on what you said. It's important to acknowledge, especially for people that are watching, the time that we are in. This is a holiday season, and for a lot of folk, it can be very triggering for a lot of different reasons, particularly for folk who may have had difficulties with family, for people who may feel isolated from community. And that's complicated by the fact that we're also experiencing this holiday in a global pandemic that has already exacerbated feelings of isolation. So I just want to acknowledge that for folk who may be watching, for whom this might be a hard time, and also just reiterate the power of community. You know, some of us have had to recreate family, recreate friendships with people to become our family in times when we felt isolated. And for me, I know particularly in moments where I'm on the other side, I'm on the West Coast, and my family, who I'm so close to, are 5 hours away by flight. My mama is so far away from me. It's been so important for me to wrap myself around, surround myself with people that I call family, people that I love. So I'm grateful for your reminder, Emil, and really just interested in how y'all thinking about what are y'all doing to take care of self? What rituals are you employing to ground yourself and to feel the love that you need in a moment like this?
Well, I mean, for me, like I said, I've tried affirmations. I've been doing, Black Boy Joy calls where we gather groups of our community. And, sometimes, you want to go on and have fun and have jokes. And sometimes it's hard and heavy and people have serious things they want to talk about. But I think that creating community within your circle of friends and family, I think is really important because we are isolated right now and we can't be with each other the way we used to. But moments like this right here, like just us being in fellowship together, is super important. So I encourage people to do that throughout the holidays.
I thought about these holiday movies and these absurd, just memories from holidays. Dominic, do you have any of like absurd or funny, our most memorable like holiday moments, our stories, our movies that come to mind?
Oh my, well, of course, Home Alone. I mean, I think we all watched Home Alone. That was part of it. I've always loved the holidays, but so this is going to be a good one. So just bear with me for a second. Um, I always loved the holidays, but for many years I was unable to be with family because of differences in beliefs, tradition, all that kind of stuff. And me living out bold and just not wanting to have to hide myself, I decided to stay ostracized, to love from a distance. Last year, and of course, during this time, my family is West Indian, so of course they thought that when, um, success came, and they realized success came because it was a shock. Oh my gosh, my this person is successful. How are they going to treat us? And so, for me, it was about love. It was about family. It was not. It was not about, as we would say in the West Indies, showing off. It was about showing love. And so, what I did was, I got together with my fiance, and we took both of our families. Then this turned out to be like 25 people deep. And we went to a ski resort that had an indoor water park. And for me, I was standing like on like this little like ship thing and looking at my family, our families blended and combined, having fun. The family that thought that being trans would have killed me would have, and instead of standing by my side, they chose to stand under what they believed was their higher power, the of serving their higher power. So for me to be able to see everyone gathered, for us to all sit after 20 years, because I'm stubborn. When you don't respect me, I'm not coming around you. I'm done with you. Right? I will love you from a distance. But and so we all went up to Great Peak. My aunts flew in, 25 of us all together, just laughing and joy. It wasn't about sexuality, it wasn't about gender. It was just about family and people together under our Christmas tree, gifts and presents that you would think were, weren't extravagant, but even like socks were laughter and joy, and that was something that really meant the world to me. So yeah, that's my Christmas story, was finding family and love with everyone that has been a part of my life last year in 2020.
That's so beautiful. And it reminds me of like my own family. When I was a kid, my grandfather would like we all my family's large, but we lived in close proximity to one another in Camden. And so everybody would go to my grandparents' house. Like you would look down the street and you'll just see these it looked like gangs coming down the street of people. Let's go to my grandparents' small house. And when we get inside, my grandfather would be sitting in his chair holding he would get bonds made for us, like U.S. bonds, then it's an amount of like $25, and it would be like 50 grandkids in a line, standing there to get this from my grand. I don't even know. I'm like, I couldn't even spend that money. Like that's. I was like, I can't spend this shit. Like I got put in the bank account, and on if I take it out now, I'm only going to get 7 cents. You know, but remarkable about being in this line and this every annual family gathering where we didn't have much of anything, but we had so much love. Now, my grandfather has passed, and he was like a father to me. And I'm reminding now of why it's so important for me to gather people. You know, why I still to this day, like, and Emil might like, I'm always gathering the people and I'm feeding the people and I'm making sure that they're cared for and feel love. And I'm wondering, like, Mark, for you, like, what are those memories for you and or the rituals that you use to like secure yourself?
Well, I think there are two. I mean, one definitely when you think about the gathering, because you know we had relatives and you know my parents were part of the Great Migration, but we had lots of relatives and friends. I grew up in Long Beach, California, from all over. So they have friends from Texas and Louisiana and Mississippi. And I think about going to different people's houses over the holidays because when you went to the Louisiana folks, there was gumbo on the stove. When you went to the Texas folks, it was barbecue. So you knew where you were by what was on the stove when you got to people's houses. So I think food has always been a big part of our tradition and our heart.
Emil, what about you?
Well, like Dominique, I'm West Indian. So my, okay, so my father was from St. Croix. So every Christmas we would go to St. Croix because it was carnival. So for me, it wasn't like a whole white Christmas tree thing. It was like steel drums, you know, bullfoot soup and all the things. And we would go. And my father was the youngest of 13. So we'd have to go to all the aunts and uncles' houses and have sweet bread and all the things. And you had to go visit every single family member. And it was great. And that's how, you know, every Christmas I remember growing up, going to St. Croix and going to Carnival and having rum raisin ice cream. And I mean, it was just amazing. So that's what I think about for the holidays. It's just, you know, thinking about that diasporic experience of being in carnival and costumes and great food and family.
It's funny, you know, I know that there may be people who are watching who may have had just a troubled relationship with family. So memories like this may be troubled a bit or complicated, and have had to probably be really creative, right, in terms of filling in that hole that families leave. And sometimes we may experience that with our own. And now I'm thinking about it, like being separated from my family because of distance. My partner and I, we went out braving COVID. And like, this is the first time I went to like buy a real tree, but it was so important to do that. I mean, we like our two black asses, you know, all them people, they were out there like, you know, two black boys out here buying a big ass, and we were like, we want the biggest, most grandest tree out here. Give us the tree and get us some help. But it was something so remarkable about as a queer person, a black queer person in this space. I'm in West Hollywood. There's not a lot of us, right? Like being able to build anew rituals on our own terms is so fulfilling to me. So outside of like family, like I gotta find out how to find that love for myself. Go ahead, Dominic, jump right in. I see you about to go.
So
Go.
I just wanted to tell you, and to those of you out there who may be feeling despair right now, I want you to really reach within yourselves, reach within yourselves, within your souls, and find those people that are around you. Because sometimes there are already people around us that are willing to be there for us, but for some reason, whether it's pride, whether it's we're not willing to let go of certain things, we don't acknowledge this. And I say that because what happened to me was I left my family one Christmas just devastated, just misgendered, just devastated, just feeling like I would never, ever, ever find that family again. And it was, West Indians are stubborn. And I was sitting in the house and I thought to myself, what? And I decided to cook. And before I knew it, all of my kids, those kids that were calling me kids, I was like, what are you doing? They're like, well, my mom and I don't get along. So the family's going to come over. They're going to make fun of me. And it just began this tradition. And for many years, I think from around like the year like 2000, my extended family, we celebrated Christmas together in such a way that, no offense to anyone, we didn't actually miss our families because we had the love of people that understood us, that did not find anything wrong with us, that saw us as human beings. We were all in the same struggle, and we made that tradition. So it was Christmas and Thanksgiving. I would have up to 20 or 30 people packed in my 300 square foot apartment in the Bronx, and it didn't feel like that. So it was family. So I implore you, I know it's a bit depressing, but right now, try to focus on getting to those people that do support you and do provide love for you. Look to what you have, and then maybe the other things can come in the future, depending on how it works, all your decision. But look to what you have right now and embrace that. Embrace those that call you each day. Embrace those that text you or email you, even though some of them may get on your nerves, but know that they're there for you.
Listen, I think the pastor has spoken. Okay. And by the way, I'm trying. Look, you can. I know we're in COVID, but if you want to make some food, because I think you sound like you can cook a little bit. But I think we're at that point now. Do people have? Are we toasting? Is that what we're doing? Mark, are you leading us in a toast?
Yeah, well, I think I'll get it started, but everybody can get their toast together. I don't know if you have I got a little
Okay,
something
I'll find
here.
something.
So,
I'll be right back.
Okay, wait.
All right. We gotta hold up. A second.
Oh, this is sweet.
But see, this is what it is, right? Like we're creating family right here.
Yeah, this is.
There you go.
I love it.
What do you got going, Emil? You got a glass?
I have a glass. I was drinking earlier, so I'm gonna have.
Oh, don't be ashamed of it. Don't be ashamed of it. Don't be ashamed of what you have to do. Listen, a part of us healing is that we do things to try to heal ourselves and then blame ourselves and suffer for it and put ourselves through hell for it afterwards. You don't go crazy. You in your home, you're fine. Have your drink, chill out.
That's right. Well, my inspiration for mine comes from Aretha singing "Holy, Holy." So I love that refrain where she says we should believe in each other's dreams. So my toast is to believing in each other's dreams.
I love that. Cheers. Wow. And my toast is really just echoing Dominique, reminding people that most of what we need, not all of it, because community is important too, but most of what we need is here. We already got it. And I hope that we can find that thing that we think we're missing right inside of us, right in front of us. So cheers, y'all.
Cheers.